this is really about if we were to have a phone-free schools policy statewide, how might that affect college courses that are taught within school buildings that have a phone-free policy when sometimes phones are needed for those college courses. And we have Kate Mobley, Dean of Enrollment, Community Relations at CCV with us today, and Wilson Garland from the State College System. Welcome to you both. Kate, why don't you start us off?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for taking the time this morning and for Wilson for joining. As you said, I'm the Dean of Enrollment and Community Relations at CCV. I also, for a number of years, oversaw our secondary education initiatives. So I want to start with like the big picture part of this, which is access for Vermont youth through Act 77, which just celebrated its 11th anniversary and has a number of different elements that students can take advantage of, which I know this committee is familiar with, but personalized learning plans, early college, and dual enrollment. And where this is, I think the terminology of it's a little bit of a niche challenge. And I just want to do some definitions so we're all on the same page in terms of what we're talking about with the challenge around a potential cell phone ban, which is there's sort of two different flavors of dual enrollment. One is straight dual enrollment, and that happens where high school students are potentially using an Act 77 voucher, sometimes paying for it if they've exhausted those vouchers, and taking a college class taught by a college faculty that also contains other students. So our general CCV population, which at CCV can mean you have students that are 16 to 75 in a classroom environment. Sometimes that means students are going to an academic building. Sometimes it means students are taking those classes online. And in that dual enrollment setup, what we've also found is that there are high schools in the state who are using dual enrollment coursework to supplement what they're being able to offer to students in their school. So sometimes it's a calculus class that students need. Sometimes it's a sort of more general education course, but it really varies in terms of the topics that students are taking. That's actually a small part of this challenge. So just to give you a sense of that for CCV, this academic year, 24-25, we have over 1,400 Vermont high school students doing dual enrollment at CCV. So that's that definition. But the larger challenge with a potential cell phone ban is in what we call our concurrent enrollment classes. And concurrent enrollment classes are taught in a high school or a tech center by a high school teacher or a tech center teacher during the day that students are there. And to give you a sense of the scope of that, how many students are participating in that, that's almost 1,100 students participating in concurrent enrollment this year.
This is a new concept to us, I think. So these are not dual enrollment courses.
They are. So this is where like terminology gets, if you and I were having a conversation about what constitutes dual enrollment,
yep.
Concurrent enrollment would be like
a subset of dual enrollment.
Exactly.
Okay.
And where it gets nuanced is the funding model. But let me give you an example of sort of the range of concurrent enrollment classes. We have 4 English composition courses that are being taught at CDU this fall. That's right, pardon me. So those students during the day are taking a class taught by their high school teacher for college credit and high school credits. Where we do most of our concurrent enrollment is in career and tech ed. And the reason for that is because CCV receives federal funding through the Perkins program. So every state agency of ed gets Perkins funding that then goes primarily to community colleges. And as part of our both compliance and outcomes, we are required to offer concurrent enrollment in career and tech ed programs. So there's a federal component of this in order for us to meet and stay in good standing with our Perkins funding. So what is it about cell phones? Why do students need cell phones in these experiences? And this is the piece where at some point I will hand it over to Wilson in terms of the technological components. But this is the piece that I want to make sure we're all on the same page with, which is because these classes are for both high school, but also college credit, it's our accreditation that holds the standard of that class. And as part of our accreditation through NECHI, we have to ensure that high school students, regardless of where they're taking a class, either at CCD or in their high school, are having the same academic experience and same opportunities and held to the same academic standards in those classes. And the way that we ensure that, or one way, is we have students utilizing our learning management system. So Canvas is the learning management system that the Vermont State Colleges use. And so if you're in that English comp class and you're in third period and you're having an English comp class that also is for your high school and college, your teacher's using the learning management system of Canvas in order to ensure that you're getting the learning at the college level. Unfortunately, we are now in a world where multi-factor authentication is a requirement for our learning management system. This is something that my secondary ed team has been working on a school by school basis, because we certainly have schools in Vermont that already have cell phone bans. For the past year and a half, we have explored countless other options in terms of how students might authenticate and be able to access campus. And I will say it's a challenge for sure. So let me just pause there, and maybe we could talk a little bit about sort of the larger cybersecurity pieces that Wilson has. Would that make sense, or do you want to?
Let me just see if there are any questions
Sure.
here. Go ahead, Josh.
And so Wilson may be the one answering this question,
Sure.
but I know for many things I have multi, right?
Yes.
And a lot of times I just use the email option, right? Because it gives me an option of that. And I believe most students have a district email and I'll have a district device, and will have access to that on the device they're actually working in Canvas on. So I would think that should be an adequate enough workaround as opposed to using a text code that comes through.
So my short answer, and then I'm going to turn over to Wilson, is we have explored that. Actually, Wilson has done some work with some school districts around their Chromebooks, and it's not a viable option, but I'll let him answer. Wilson, do you want to do the email authentication piece?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So in our environment, it's, our number one for us is obviously keeping student, staff, and other constituents' data secure. And we have a number of different requirements related to that, and including, we carry cyber insurance for the event if we ever did have a breach or other things like that. Related to other options for multi-factor authentication itself is going through an evolution, and where email used to be a trusted way for people to provide multi-factor authentication, with the availability of security breaches and identity theft and other things, email is no longer considered by most cybersecurity experts to be a secure way for multi-factor authentication. So most multi-factor authentication tools that are available have phased email out, with the exception of using email to reset your password. So in many cases, you'll still get prompted to reset your password through email. But when it comes to multi-factor authentication, most multi-factor authentication tools require you to get a code to your phone, or do some sort of app on the phone or device that allows you to get the code that you need.
Go ahead, Josh.
So, company I worked for previously had an app that I could download on my phone. I actually had to download it on my computer.
Yep.
Right. So why couldn't we have that kind of technology available to the schools to download on their Chromebooks?
Well, why don't we ask this question maybe? As you said, there are already schools with phone-free school bands. How are you addressing it with those schools?
So I'll answer that part and then I'll have Wilson answer the other part. It has been a hodgepodge. We work with 72 different high schools and how they do it is different. I will just say multi-factor authentication is a 30-second hit a button and then you have access to Canvas and the portal for 24 hours. So there's a school district, Mount Anthony, that has students walk in the door that are taking a concurrent enrollment or dual enrollment course. They have to have their laptops open, they do it, and then their phones get put away. We're aware of another school district where it's sort of a more flexible cell phone policy, meaning it's a classroom by classroom decision. And those teachers are putting them in little pouches and then having them take them out and put that back. Clearly, there comes with K-12 management on any of those solutions, but I will say the value of concurrent enrollment and dual enrollment courses, I think is high enough for school districts that we've been working with them on a case-by-case basis. That being said, that doesn't represent every high school in the state. And so the scale of this would really change the game in that way around students having access. But Wilson, do you want to answer
Sure.
the other?
Yep. And we've evaluated a number of different multi-factor authentication tools. The one that we use currently for all of our systems is called Duo. I believe it's a Cisco product. And Duo is available for iPhone. It's also available on Android. The Android app can be downloaded onto a Chromebook, but there are technical reasons why it's not easily supported. So when somebody logs out, the information doesn't automatically reload with their credentials and other things, and it would need to be authenticated. Basically, Duo is not supported as an app on the Chromebooks, but it's something that we've tested and are continuing to work to see if there's ways that we could configure it. And it may not work in all circumstances, but it requires a fair amount of setup on the school side in order to have it be active within their environment. It would require some additional setup on a student-by-student basis on our side, certainly more so than getting it set up once on a student's device.
So do you have suggested solutions for us to think about?
Sure. I mean, I think one potential solution would be to have in the legislation, I believe I'm correct, there's a medical exemption that's currently, would dual enrollment be considered an exemption? Meaning then schools get to decide how they implement that exception, but at least it would be consistent for schools to be empowered to have that. We've certainly had conversations with the School Boards Association, the superintendents. I know they're talking about model policies. From our perspective, some consistency would be helpful with that, just in terms of how to both support students doing that and also supporting the K-12 staff, who at the end of the day are going to be the ones who are managing that in the moment. So clearly, we need to make sure that that feels viable on their end. Wilson, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I think just the point that you made earlier, Katie, is important, and that is, they don't need their device to do the learning. If they are working on their Chromebook or on a computer in the library or other things like that, they really just need the device for that 30 seconds to authenticate themselves as a user within the system. So if there's a way to construct the procedures to allow for momentary access, but certainly supportive of the not having phones accessible during the learning process.
Representative Brady, then Representative Dovich.
Oh, the background for all of us, as you're well aware, I think devices across schools are gonna vary. We keep talking about Chromebooks, but not all schools have
Mhm.
Chromebooks.
I know.
Colchester does laptops.
Yeah.
Many students are frustrated with the technology, bring their own, so it's not as if you can
Right.
solve for one common device across. the
Right,
system.
and I don't know if I came in at this point, I mean, we have worked with at least 15 districts
and
on
they're
an
all-
individual
yeah.
basis, and it's frankly overwhelming, like from that perspective of,
Yeah.
okay, you have this, you have that, how do, it's, yeah. Wasn't a complete sentence, sorry, but it's overwhelming.
Representative
I would say.
Dovich.
Have you guys taken the time to look at other authentication software that could work across more platforms than what you're currently using? Because I mean, there's a lot out there, and like I said, I still get the emails from all my banks. I don't have to use my phone for any of them. So, but I mean, there's more technology out there, and I know there's a cost. There's a on-ramp to all of it, right? It's not a simple thing. It's just flipping a switch to another product. But have you guys researched other products that could be a bigger envelope or umbrella for all these devices?
So I'm gonna answer that, then Wilson, I just wanna say one thing, which is, I have been saying for the past year and a half, like, I don't understand why we have to
Why it's
deal with
a problem,
this,
yeah.
frankly, it's just so challenging. I'm sure if you utilize the medical center, you just got a thing saying they're doing multi-factor authentication, like, your banks, it's a matter of
No, they
time.
do it, but they give me the option of a text or an email.
So I'm gonna predict that email is gonna go away, but I'm gonna let Wilson answer that other part. But the other piece to know, and this is, so CCV is the largest higher ed partner in this game. But the other thing to keep in mind, and BTSU, of course, as our sister institution, has the same technology. UVM offers dual enrollment and concurrent enrollment. St. Mike's, Norwich, they all have different, we sort of came to the table because we are the ones who do the most with this, and we have 100% been trying to problem solve this on an individual layer. And then once it became apparent that this might be bigger than that, sort of said, oh, we've gotta explain sort of what the context is. But Wilson, do you want to answer the other part of it?
Sure. Yeah, and we have explored other authentication tools, not just for this purpose, but when we were exploring tools ourselves initially and choosing Duo, we looked at a number of different tools. We were hopeful that the Microsoft tool might be one where we could continue using email, but even Microsoft now has moved to email only for resetting passwords for their most recent authentication. So at least in the way that we've implemented and implemented our own identity management, Duo is the most flexible of the options and allows us to do some things that we're not able to do. But we've eliminated some of the configurations that are most problematic from a security perspective. But and it's just not available within Duo, and it's not available within Microsoft, which are the two that are most likely for us.
Does all of this mean that anybody who's doing dual enrollment is required to have a cell phone?
That's what I was just gonna ask, yeah.
Anybody who can log into our system would need to be authenticated using some sort of device.
So I'm gonna take that as a yes
Well, except at MAU, they just dial it in the morning
on their cell phone.
and they walk away and then they
All I'm
pouch it.
saying is that if you want to be in
It's sort of a secondary
Oh,
wanna be in
requirement
just-
of dual enrollment.
Right.
dual enrollment, you have to. own
If you're
cell
a kid
phone.
without a cell phone, right?
Yeah, because they're kids without cell phone.
Yeah,
Many, but-
they're probably using their parents. I mean, yeah, I was trying to think through the different scenarios of that. Yeah,
So
I realize probably everybody has a cell phone, but that's.
Well, no,
seems
but
like
no,
there's
they
a- there's
don't.
something you should-
yeah,
Don't want to assume.
yeah.
So then a student who doesn't have a cell phone or access to one during school hours can't be in dual enrollment.
No, what I would hope we would do, and this is a little hypothetical because no one has come to us with that specific problem. I would say my guess is a parent has a cell phone, and authentication lasts for 24 hours. So that's where,
So they could do the authentication at home before they leave in the morning.
so we did talk about this, and I will say, we talked to a couple districts. Mount Anthony started with the do it at home thing. And then
Everybody
students didn't
forgot.
do it at home. it's your class, right? So you're sitting there not able to access Canvas or do the work. And my thing on this a little bit is I want students to be responsible, and our dual enrollment students are 16 and 17. And I have a 17-year-old who sent me a text while I was sitting here saying, I forgot my cleats, right? So that's okay. That's just about practice. But the regularity of that, and again, this is what I would say, that's gonna fall on K-12. So I think that's a challenge.
So,
Go ahead, Representative Long.
thank you. So I'm hearing everything in the 24, I hear the 24-hour thing. Most of the recommendations that we're focusing here on is bell to bell.
Yeah.
So we're not saying kids can't bring their cell phones to school. We're just
Right.
saying
Yeah.
they bring them to school and then
Yeah.
they turn them in to
Yeah.
whatever the school decides or we decide,
Sure.
and then they pick them up at the end of the day.
Yep.
Why is it they can't just sign in when they get there? They're too authentic, you know.
They
two-factor.
100% could. I would say, I think you're gonna need to hopefully develop some either.
But I mean, I'm saying before,
Yeah.
if it's bell to bell, they do it just when they get to school before they turn their phone in. That's not, I mean, every
Sure.
child needs to be responsible, as you just said,
Yeah,
for being able to sign in and remembering their phone that day. And that could be true with,
100%. That will fall on the school to manage that. So the piece that will have to happen before the bell, just to be clear on this, is a student will have to open their laptop, go to, or Chromebook or whatever, iPad, be in our portal,
Mhm.
have a cell phone to do it. That's fine. Schools might end up saying, if you're in a dual enrollment or concurrent enrollment class, you gotta come to school 20 minutes early to get yourself ready. Like, I think how it gets implemented, that is 100%. At CCV, we are not advocating in any way to say, we want students walking around with cell phones, or students need to have access to their cell phones if it is a bell to bell. We just want you to understand the workload implication that frankly is gonna fall on K-12 around these options for students. Does that answer your question?
yes, I hear what you're saying. Yes, thank you.
Representative Dovich.
To try and simplify the process you just came up with.
Mhm.
Could I have Canvas on my phone
Mhm.
and then go to log in on my phone, use the authentication, then I'm in Canvas. I didn't have to pull out my tablet, which might be sitting in my room because some schools don't let me
Yeah.
take them home.
Right.
So then I can do everything on my phone. Boop, shut it off and hand it in, and then still be able to go to my computer and get in Canvas because I logged into Canvas. Or does it have to be logged in on the specific device that you're going to be using?
I'm gonna let Wilson answer that.
Yeah.
No.
It does need to be the same device, so you need to authenticate that you're the user on that device. Yeah, and many of you have probably, when you log into a bank or something, it asks, is this a trusted device? Is this your personal device? That's the reason, right? So it is a device to device connection. And basically when you do the authentication, you're authenticating it. And while you can do it, and have it be active for 24 hours. I mean, there are some nuances. If you take the device into a different network, it's working off of a different range of IP addresses and things like that can be problematic. So I think the specifics of it being the same device and within the same general computing environment, like Katie said, it could be, the 20 minutes before school starts or whenever, but that should be adequate.
I think hearing all this, it's really important that we don't make exceptions. Our policies that are good for all high schools should not be driven by what's good for CCV. I mean, we're seeing the same thing with early college and its drain on our system. And now we're talking about backpedaling on this because of what's good for this. If it's a little more inconvenient for the kids who are doing dual enrollment, I mean, maybe it's even time to have the conversation of, does this still work as intended for high schools anyway? But that's obviously a much larger conversation.
Yeah.
But we should not be having this drive.
But that's a discussion for us. I think the purpose here was to understand
Right.
what the roadblocks are, what the challenges are, and I think as you very accurately point out, how whatever solution we come up with for it is going to fall on the public school system.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I guess I would just like to say a couple things about that. One, so federal Perkins funding is a huge amount of dollars that come into our state, and that's a requirement that goes to the community college. So regardless of what this committee talks about from sort of a different funding source, concurrent enrollment at career and tech ed centers has to happen in the state to get Perkins funding. So you have to figure out cell phones in that environment at a baseline. Your other conversations, I can appreciate there's some nuances there, but you are gonna have to figure out how to make students be able to take concurrent enrollment and dual enrollment. And the other thing I guess I would just say is dual enrollment provides opportunities for students in the state of Vermont that aren't happening in their high schools. And so I think does CCD benefit in some ways? Sure. We get tuition dollars, but I think it's important to keep students at the center here. And when you look at the numbers of students and the range of experiences, I think it's really important to keep that in mind.
Bigger discussion, different
Sure.
day.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
We may be just getting too far into the weeds here.
Yeah.
That just that whatever legislation we pass has phrasing in there about, and it's up to each individual school district to develop policies around exceptions, such as dual enrollment,
Yeah.
medical. Yeah.
Our challenge in this committee will be, are
Right.
we building in exceptions or are we making a broader
Let's-
policy?
right.
As done school
Sure,
by
because it'll
school.
be different from school to school.
Yeah.
it'd
Yeah.
be great if it was the same.
It'd be great if it's
I
the
just won't
same, but
say
I just
that.
know it's not gonna be because they don't have the same technology.
Yeah,
Some schools don't allow kids to take devices out of the school building, some
sure,
do.
yeah.
Some
Fair to
kids
dream.
are there 20 minutes before bell for breakfast time, wherever some are not.
Yep.
So if we trust schools to be able to figure out how these exceptions are done, I think we're okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For,
Yeah.
Thank you.
highlighting the challenge here.
Sure. And if there's
Figured out.
And
any
to
other
understand the
questions-
technology and that all of cybersecurity is going in a different format and it
Yep.
can't do email anymore, didn't know any of that, so very
Yeah.
helpful.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you
Thanks
for
a
the
lot.
time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so, we are now going to refamiliarize ourselves with H54. So there have been some language changes, I think a little bit based on our conversations. Representative Arsenault, sponsor of the bill, also had some suggested language for how we define social media. And I asked legislative council to include that. And so we can look at that language and figure out where it falls short or where it does well. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome back to the committee.
Thank you.
It's
Beth
been a
St.
while.
James. It hasn't been that long, but yeah.
Feels like.
Beth St. James, Office of Legislative Counsel. Happy to be here. Would you like me to share my screen with the
Yes,
new language?
please.
Okay.
Yes.
North Dakota just passed our bill.
Is that?
North Dakota just passed our bill.
What's that?
Like literally bell to bell.
Mhm.
Love it.
You
Okay.
are in charge of finding a copy of it and
Yeah.
emailing it to the committee.
Sending it to
That'd be
us.
great.
Oh,
Easier done than said.
I was gonna offer to do that, but by all means.
No,
No, keep going.
I just quit, so it's you.
Right behind you. So what we're looking at is, you're the first time looking at this bill in an amendment form. So this would be your committee report on the bill. So we have the preamble here, but then the body of the bill. Any changes between the bill as introduced in this draft 1.1 are highlighted in yellow, hopefully. So no changes to findings. And I appreciate the tee up that Chair Conlon gave. These edits are solely from our discussion last week, with the exception of the social media definition. So no changes to like where this language would live or the different statutes themselves that you're proposing to add. So the first change is on page 4, adding a definition for individualized healthcare plan. Means a written document developed by a school nurse in collaboration with parents, students, and other relevant professionals to outline specific healthcare needs and management strategies tailored to the unique health condition of a student.
I think there should be a requirement that the student's healthcare provider, whether it be a psychologist, psychiatrist, medical doctor, has to be in that. They have to have the say in it, and it has to be part of their treatment plan.
I think that's
Isn't
addressed a
that
little
what-
later.
I hope so.
Well,
These are just,
TBD. We can look at obviously we'll look at the language together and you decide. So the slight challenge here is, and I don't see any of your experts here on this. An individualized healthcare plan is not otherwise defined in Title 16.
is it anywhere?
Not that I am aware of in state law. There may be a rule series somewhere that has it, and I'm just not aware of it. So these definitions apply only to this subchapter. So you're really limiting where this definition is applicable. So you can really tailor it to this specific situation. However, and I would encourage you, if you really want to, to hear from the folks in the field who work with individualized healthcare plans. Despite not being a defined concept in state law, this is a thing that is happening every day in the schools. And I don't have the expertise to be able to weigh in and say, by asking for a provider, part of a care plan or something like that, you're actually deviating from what an individualized healthcare plan is. So I don't know. So I would just point out that I am not the best subject matter expert on.
IHCPs, we're gonna call them.
Or monkeying with this definition, what you do to the field. I don't know. The next change is still on page 4. This is the definition of social media that your chair referenced before I started. So let's just walk through it and then I'll point out I have some kind of, I don't want to say concerns, but I think this language could use some tweaking. So social media means any online product or service used primarily for the purpose of posting and viewing user-generated content. As used in this subchapter, social media does not include an online product or service where the exclusive function is email or direct messaging shared only between the sender and intended recipients without displaying or publicly posting to other users not specifically identified by the sender as recipients. An online product or service that does not involve school-specific features or identifiers, where the predominant purpose of the product or service is the posting of educational materials, news, or resources, and where the posting of comments by users or other interactive functionality is incidental to the predominant purpose of the product or service. Or a school-managed online product or service used solely for the purpose of publishing student journalism or school-related news, events, and updates. Do you want to keep going? You want to talk about this
Why don't
definition?
we talk about this definition?
Do you want me to talk about this?
Yes.
Yeah. And what do you think about the word algorithm? Because that's been bumped around a little bit.
I don't know. So don't
Let's
know.
go with what we have here first.
So, so I'm just gonna go starting on line 12 on page 4. Any online product or service used primarily for the purpose of posting and viewing user-generated content. I am not a social media expert. I am not a media expert. I am not deep in the space of what online use and social media is doing to humans in general, let alone kids. So I'm not your expert. I'm just wordsmithing this with you from a legal standpoint. This seems really broad. Posting and viewing user-generated content. Who, if you own a website, then you are a user of a website and you are posting on it.
Right.
But I'm just saying, like, as a lawyer, if I'm trying to look for the holes in places, I would say I would need to understand more about what we're trying to get at here.
And maybe this is the place where you say user generated content, comma, where algorithms are used to target users, et cetera, et cetera.
I don't know, does that, are there algorithms on jcrew.com? I mean, I don't
Yes.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You keep getting ads.
Yes,
I wanna-
Yeah.
Before we start kind of going through suggested fixes here, let's just kind of go through it.
Okay.
What the holes are. Yes.
Can I, so where did is this just Representative Arson's language, or is this some, where is this pulling from, like legally?
I'd have to go back and look at my communications with her.
I thought she said maybe federal.
I didn't know if you had any.
I mean, just the same email that your
Okay.
chair has, and my memory, I can speak to that, but I'll let your chair.
I didn't know if you had other
I believe it came from some constituents.
legal
Oh.
research
I think it came from advocates.
field
Yeah.
that
Oh,
No, I have not.
to arrive at that definition.
I have not. No, this was taken verbatim from that recommendation. And here we are.
I mean, there are huge lawsuits against them. I wonder how it's defined.
right.
Yes, and I think depending on what you all want to
But those
do.
are, I guess, specific companies,
Yeah.
but it's in the context, so I don't know if there's
This-
definitions there that help us.
There are definitions everywhere.
Yeah.
And this, I'd just say this is one of the challenges we're facing by going into this part of the bill, as opposed to just logging up phones for the day.
And I will say, I believe, if my memory is correct, that the definition in the bill as introduced actually came from a federal law.
Right.
I can't speak right now. My memory is not good enough to tell you what the federal law was or the context. But that is one definition that's floating around out there. Do you want me to keep pointing out concerns I have, or?
Yes, but I'll let Representative Dovich ask his question, so long as it's not highly technical.
No, I'll do my best. So seeing as like there's some gray areas that it sounds like you're not fully versed in. Am I correct in saying that? I'm not trying to discount what you're presenting.
Keep going.
Are there other
Yep.
legal professionals within this field that we could get testimony from maybe like the Social Media Victims Law Center or something like that to help us with this definition, so it's a little more
That's our job.
I officially
I'm asking you, not-
deputize you
Yeah. that's our job.
to go to the, whatever that organization you just mentioned, and see if they do have something. That would be really helpful.
or someone. They wanted, like, we wanted someone to testify.
Yeah, but if there's something,
Yeah,
if there's something there, that'd be great.
And yes, I am not an expert in
I'm not
social
trying
media.
to.
No. I just saw an easy opportunity for a giggle, so,
We need.
don't we? I'm happy to do more research on this, right? I just hadn't, this is what we're working with today. But absolutely, there are folks out there. I mean, this is a space that is being litigated, that is being researched, that is being analyzed and debated. So absolutely, there are folks out there. It is just very unsettled.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So you're gonna get different points of view and,
So I would like Josh to follow up with his idea and anybody else here who would like to do some research. And to the extent that you have available time, that would be fine.
absolutely.
I, however, do not want to take up your time, given your other responsibilities.
There's nothing else going.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're referring to. Yeah, understood. I'm making a research note here. Going back to the language, line 15, and this is not, I hope the folks out there who are watching and you all are not taking this as me criticizing this. I'm walking through, this isn't from my brain, and so these are the thoughts that came to my brain as I was typing it up. And online, so these are, so A through C, so line 15 on page 4, through the end of page 4, and then 1 through 5 on page 5 are the exceptions to what social media is. So these things are not social media. And so an online product or service where the exclusive function is email or direct messaging shared only between the sender and intended recipients without displaying or publicly posting to other users not specifically identified by the sender's recipients. Okay, so in addition to not being a social media expert, I am also an elder millennial. So I am not the most versed when it comes to the products that are out there, but I immediately thought, what about Snapchat?
Right, that's exactly the way that came to mind.
Okay.
And I was thinking like, yeah, or Facebook Messenger and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly, because that is a separate app than
That's right.
Facebook itself. And the exclusive function of it is direct
But
messaging.
it does actually tie into Facebook as well, because you can actually directly access Facebook from Messenger.
That's why it's, I get too technical here. Representative
Well,
Brady?
can I ask a
That's why
question?
I would.
To ground my understanding now, as we walk through this definitions, we're talking about defining social media because we're talking about the schools cannot require student, like, I want to understand why we're defining social media, because we're not banning social media. We do not have that power. I mean, I don't know, maybe we do, but we that's not what we are doing here. We're not writ large banning social media for kids.
That's
That would be a different bill.
Right.
This is
Simply.
schools cannot require the usage of social media for students. I guess
School
there's no need to
functions.
understand, but exactly what the definition is we're defining it
It
for.
also says cannot communicate directly. to
That's a
students.
great point. So
Sorry,
let's skip
so
ahead.
if
Nope,
you could help ground us there and
Yep.
then
No, but
here
that's
so that we're
important.
not wandering into.
great. And again, this is all
Forest here.
policy for you all.
Mhm.
So the piece on social media starts on page 6. And it prohibits schools, school districts, and SUs from using social media for communication with students directly. Again, the yellow language is new that I've added from our discussion. Unless the program or platform is approved by the school district for such communication. So what this does, and this is one of the points I was going to make, is on page 6, lines 18 and 19. You're just saying social media, you're going to refer back up to the definition of social media. You potentially don't need any exceptions in there, because you're
Yeah.
saying
Right.
the school district gets to decide what's appropriate for use or not.
Yeah.
And then, so it's, the school is prohibited from using social media for direct communication with students. And asking or requiring students to use social media for school activities. And then schools have to have in place measures to prevent students from accessing social media while on school issued electronic devices. Unless access to social, again, this is new language. Unless access to social media is approved by an educator as an integral portion of a lesson plan. So I think you have lots of different things you can do here. You can build in exceptions and just say no social media. You don't need exceptions if you're leaving some discretion, or you can do both. But I think it depends on how much leeway you want to give to the field on a individual, school by school, policy by policy basis, or how prescriptive you want to be across the board. So prohibition on using social media to communicate with students directly or requiring them to use it for school activities. So that's does that help ground you? Okay.
Yes.
Then we're gonna go back up here. So I would just, again, not an expert on these things, but I'm not sure that the exception in subdivision A is.
Can I just ask a quick
Yeah, please.
question? I don't need you to go back to the page, but I'm still looking at what we were just looking at. And when it said schools, school districts, and supervisory units are prohibited from utilizing social media for communication with students directly.
Mhm.
Was the language.
Mhm.
And then unless
Mhm.
this program platform is approved. So it doesn't mean that a school couldn't use social media.
No, this is specifically saying
It's saying
schools
they
can,
If
if
Yeah.
the school district chooses to.
Right, so it's.
What is that, Taylor?
I don't want to jump ahead to this subject, but when we do get to a discussion about the subject, I still have very big concerns about some guardrails around what kind of an application the school can say is okay.
Right.
And making sure it's archived, printable, easily monitored by the district and all that stuff. So just throw that back out there.
Great.
Okay. So we're talking about
I-
records
I-
retention. Okay.
I'm I'm back where
Yeah,
you
keep
are.
going. Don't lose your
Okay.
thought there.
Would be a good question to ask
It's a good point.
when Megan comes in at 10:15 at communications.
Mhm.
Yes.
School communications, of
Yes.
all those things they use, do they do those? Are those things even?
Well, there was
Capabilities.
one that our school district does use that is capable of all that.
And just by using what you said, would that actually solve a lot of this definition problem? Yeah, that's a question about it.
Do you want to keep looking at the definition? Sure. Yes.
Yeah.
So we're on so I've shared my thoughts on subdivision A. I'm gonna move on to subdivision B. An online product or service that does not involve school-specific features or identifiers. I'm not quite sure what features or identifiers is trying to get at here. So if you like this definition, and if you want to work with this, this is an area to wordsmith. Okay. Where the predominant purpose of the product or service is the posting of educational materials, news or resources, and where the posting of comments by users or other interactive functionality is incidental to the predominant purpose of the product or service. I would be curious as to what you're trying to sweep in here in this exception. The big one that I thought of, again, just as a human out in the world, is Substack. But Substack also has things like what makeup trends are happening in 2025, right? Or nail polish colors. It's not all about, articles
Right.
that of educational value. Although perhaps for a cosmetology program, those articles are of educational value.
We just saw a robust cosmetology
We
program
did.
yesterday, so.
Oh, did you
Good.
go
We
to
did.
Central Vermont?
Yeah.
$15, good.
Sign me up.
Beat it.
A school managed online product or service used solely for the purpose of publishing student journalism or school related news, events and updates. That makes sense. I don't know what school managed is intended to mean. Is it that the school has control over it? Do they own it? Is it a website that the school is building and, or is it just a service that they have approved?
There are products I know at our school. It's, you can subscribe and, get a template for your school newspaper and do it all online, that sort of
So I
thing.
may just.
So I think that's a school managed online product.
Approved?
Again, if this is an area where we want to spend time, maybe this.
Or do we start leaving more, ability to choose to the school district? I would say with a lot of the caveats that Representative Taylor added in.
But what you're saying, if I'm understanding right, is correctly, is that we might not need all of this stuff because if it's covered in, say, page 7B, unless access to social media or an online platform, perhaps we add, is approved by an educator as an integral portion of it. Like, we're almost doubling.
Right, we're saying that more than once.
Yes, and it's technically a policy choice is whether you want to limit what social media even means to begin with. And then,
Wow.
That feels like a harder gate for us to go through because it's like PCBs in the camera, but we live in a media obsessed, saturated world. Like we're trying to define things that
Right.
we don't fully
Change every
understand
day.
and are constantly evolving in a, just grossly rich industry that will be 10,000 steps ahead of us no matter what we do.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I'm just reading right here. And I think maybe this is the key word, and I didn't come up with this, somebody else did. Social media algorithms are automated systems that determine which content users see and the order in which they see it. They are designed to maximize engagement, and keep users on the platform, often prioritizing content that is popular or likely to be of interest based on the user's past behavior. And I think that when we're talking about social media, or even if, like you said, Jake Grew or whatever, like they know you, right? They know you and they keep feeding you stuff. So if at the end of your first sentence definition, it said that any site that utilizes algorithms to specifically target users, that just might.
So I would say challenge that would be,
What doesn't?
then the school has to figure out.
That's what I-
if doesn't
What
meet that
doesn't?
definition.
I do not want to go down.
Okay.
And again, this is, I think, from my mind, the exception we have for teachers who say, you know, I want you to go on those so you can learn from
Right.
them
Right.
is one thing. I think we're trying to target what social media is as a restriction as to what a school can use for direct communication.
Yes.
Right.
Just within that world.
Well, but not just it too, it's not just direct communication, it's for out of school academic work, homework.
Right.
Like we're,
Well, we can't tell
We
them,
don't
we're just like,
control it.
we can't tell them they have to use any of those. If they go home on their home computer and use XYZ 1, 2, 3, that's their prerogative when they're
Right.
under our supervision.
Just-
We can't tell them what they have to do.
Now, this is all about restricting what a school can use
Yes.
for direct communication or require students to be part of. And potentially what teachers can assign students, if we want to go down that path.
but to be, so, but it's not saying we're not prohibiting teachers or schools from using it for some journalism purpose or some like academic in-school purpose.
Wow.
If we're not prohibiting that, then we don't need to define or exempt that, right?
We don't need to, so if you're back on the last page there,
That's why I keep
where
going
we
back
say
to that
unless social
unless.
media is approved by educators and require a lesson
Just
plan,
put that in
then
there.
we don't need
Covers
to.
everything.
You check out ABC.
Well, schools, B, letter B on the last page, or 7 of 8, page 7, schools shall have in place measures to prevent students from accessing social media while on school issued electronic devices. Yeah. Do we need a definition of social media for that? So probably. In a way, we're telling schools to do something that they're all
That's what
already doing.
How is it?
I can't, we have not heard from a single education group that has said that they aren't restricting. Everybody keeps saying, oh yeah, Chrome pads are restricted from this, and the other thing.
Wait, are you asking for
was
examples of
bad.
how we have used it and asked for it to be opened up? Because I have, and I can give you examples of.
No,
things
no,
that
because we're
we
saying
kept
unless the
secret.
social media is approved by an educator as a.
Right.
Okay.
So my question maybe for the educators in the room, what kind of social media would you need to approve as an integral part of the lesson plan? And why would you, and why would you need to?
I'd be happy to answer that. So I've done lessons using Post Secret, which is a blog. I've, Humans of New York. I've even done like having middle schoolers track their own digital footprint on Facebook and asked our security to open up Facebook for a few hours so they could see what like how college applicants or employers can look at them and the things that they wish that weren't online.
Yeah.
Those are all
I mean,
examples of
so
A
things.
media literacy course.
Yeah.
Needs to have access to.
So I'm just saying, so you're using it to teach them
Yeah.
about how social media works. You're not using it to say, go on social media and go research how this thing happened.
Well, in that third example, in the first two examples, like Post Secret and Humans of New
Those are
York,
blogs, right? Those aren't necessarily like
No.
Facebook.
The-
Well,
there
this
is-
is where we're having. to-
access them through social media.
Yes, you do.
And yes, I have asked them to go and look at those for examples of how people are generating content as art, folk art, sort of.
Is it something that as, and this is for me understanding, so I'm asking you since you offered, can you as an instructor pull up that information and share it through like a light board or something, or, you know?
A light board?
Oh, sorry, so like some schools have like a board, it's a projector that projects on, smartboard, thank you.
Oh, okay.
Or a TV screen or
Smart
something like that, so you can actually
Yes,
be
that,
the purveyor of the information where they're not.
yes,
getting
that
access
would
or-
be a workaround. And also actually both of those examples exist on their own websites, which are a little clunkier than to just go to them through the
So there are
social
other-
media.
are
But
there
yes, there are
options
workarounds. Yes, there are.
Thank you.
And you could have one teacher just doing it on their computer, which this doesn't seem to prohibit.
All right,
The-
so I don't want to have much more of this conversation,
Okay.
only because we have limited time.
Yeah.
with Legislative council. Representative Taylor.
So these two that's on the screen right now, the two highlighted, are we contradicting ourselves?
A little bit.
Say again?
As the two highlighted, that is on this page that we're looking at right now, we're contradicting ourselves.
Oh,
Yes. And I think you could read it as B is about in school. And 2 is about when you go home or you're out of the classroom. I'm not saying that that is good. I'm just, yes, I think that is a genuinely good point. Yes. And maybe you just get rid of asking or requiring
That's right.
students to use, you just get rid of all of that. And you just say
That's right.
unless social media is approved by an educator as an integral portion of the lesson
Yes.
plan.
Right.
That works. Say
So-
that again.
See, and I have a hard time even with that, because if there is a workaround, why do we even need to have it as part of the lesson plan?
Well, you know, have school be all about workarounds.
Also, because we trust teachers, because
Yes.
teachers have license and are responsible and are not trying to harm children. And we have hired them knowing that they have the best interest of kids in mind and are doing the best job that they
I don't
can.
disagree with you. I'm thinking about the kid who now has access to social media and might do other things while they're on the social
But
media,
they-
when they're not supposed to, and when they're supposed to do something else.
Yeah. I think we're overthinking this. The real point of this bill was to keep cell phones out of
Yes.
schools, and suddenly we're getting like,
Well, it was
Yeah.
it's twofold. It was bell to bell, cell phone, free schools. And restricting the use of social media for direct communication tool, as a direct communication tool.
Just different than as an educational tool. You're
Right,
talking
that's
about
right.
Two very different things.
Exactly.
Communication tool
Right.
versus educational. tool.
That's
So,
correct.
That's
so
where
we could get out
we're
of
getting
all of this
really tied up.
and go with just
Instructional vision.
Yeah, I'm not sure we're gonna have any instructions for you yet. But we might discuss it further and then communicate some, we'll Facebook you with some changes.
I'll never see it. So great.
Direct messaging.
Chrome pad, that was nice.
I did not say
Chrome.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, I think you
Yes, you did. It's on
We'll
you.
go find it all.
Yeah.
God.
Do you want me to connect? I'm gonna connect with Rep Taylor about his point about just the archiving and record retention.
Yes, yes,
Is
I
that-
think
Okay, okay.
that some sort of safeguard like that would be great. Something
Okay.
like to put a safeguard like that.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you want me to put it back up?
No, I think here's where my concern, I completely support the bill, this policy, like getting kids off phones all day, schools managing them. I think we are quickly realizing my concern has been anytime you try to do something in schools, it's not as simple as it sounds. And the amount of work things might potentially create. Again, this will not change. I am for it. I will advocate for it. But I think it's good for us to be aware of the reality of the amount of things, whether it's dual enrollment students have to come to a separate door at these 7 minutes to sign into this authentication thing, or this log for this English class, or what does this mean? Or do schools have to find out if a program uses an algorithm? Like, the world of media is the world we live in, and schools are just swept up in that. And once again, like, sort of paying the price and having to deal with and problem solve. And this is just so this is not against the bill at all. It's just a reminder, I think, of.
What we're up against.
And a simple better. Good.
So I'm in favor of no social media in school, but that's, as we're seeing this, it's becoming a very large topic with a lot of different loopholes and factors involved with it. If we focused on the communication part of it and didn't necessarily deal with the education part, unless, and putting word in there, something about restricting as much as possible the use of social media and curriculum or whatever, but have this mostly be focused on the communication tool between the school and the students. I'm just kind of throwing that out there because the education part is a whole, even though I would love to have not happen, is a whole bigger discussion that communication part.
Yeah. To Leanne's point, I do think of, we've had lots of calls about, we need to have media literacy curriculum. And understanding social media is part of media literacy, probably the most important part.
And I'll just add, to back up what we heard from Representative Harple, I think we need to make sure that we are trusting our educators to provide education to our kids.
All right. I think what we'll do is, first of all, take a break. But second, have you and Beth talk a little bit about some language there. I'm gonna ask if everybody is okay with this, come back with a version of this that sort of talks out, that removes the sort of social media in education part of it, but keeps it in the control of direct communication, not using social media somehow.
Do you want to keep the, or approved by the school, but if it's approved by the school district, it's okay?
For now, yes.
Add his language to that piece too.
So you want to pull, maybe I should share my screen again.
Do we want to do that now, or would we want to do it? I do have an email out to two attorneys from the Social Media Victims Law Center. Do we, or do we want to wait to see if they have a better way to define it that makes it less cumbersome?
It probably doesn't matter, we're just talking about deleting some paragraphs.
Yeah,
that's right.
okay.
Exactly.
Okay,
I don't think this-
procedurally, I don't know how the whole.
I don't think the discussion needs to end on.
Okay.
No.
It's the focal point.
So you want
Yeah,
to
I'm
keep
still wondering.
Yeah, no, I haven't-
We're gonna keep
A1
You're gonna work with Representative
Yep.
Taylor.
about records retention and, yep. What are we doing here?
Yeah.
I kind of like number 2 though, still, was an
You
issue
like-
people were talking about, right?
Yeah,
It's the 2B part
Or not to be.
that we may not need to have, right?
so you are, Beth, Beth, you are liking 2 and B?
No,
She
2,
likes 2, but-
because that was brought up, because I was a part of like, let's not even talk about social media, let's get rid of that entire section
Yeah.
and focus on the bell-to-bell ban
Yeah.
of cell phones and not even get into any of this in this
Yeah.
bill. But people wanted to. But people seem to talk a lot about number 2. If you're asking kids to be on Facebook for practice schedules, it
Yeah.
sucks you into other stuff.
Right.
Or,
So-
so keeping 2, but it's the B that.
Again, we have to define social media, that's our.
Yeah.
I think B still needs to stay in some form,
Okay,
because schools should have in place measures
I
to
think they
prevent
do.
students from accessing
Right.
social media on their.
So every time we use the term
Period.
social media, though,
Yeah.
we have to probably define it, or I don't know, do we have to define it? Can we just sort of throw it out there and
There should
Everybody
be
knows
some
what we're
talking about.
filters.
Yes, that is a policy option you can.
I was
choose
thinking
to
about
take.
more from a legal
But
point of
then
view.
I wonder if we need testimony, we need to understand, and are those filters exist? Are we talking about it, like, unfundamental, are we talking about schools having to buy new filters or different products than what is currently being used, which is not uniform in our highly customized state?
So we can say, if schools shall make efforts to prevent students from accessing.
Right, I mean, it doesn't have
Well,
to be so
just-
prescriptive, but like I know in our district that there are options to lock out YouTube, there are options to
Yeah.
lock out different social media. Applications.
So like in our SU, we actually block so that the service that students would be able to get on for internet goes away. from bell to bell. They can log in with their own Chromebook to the other school's protected network. So on their own devices, they can't, unless they have a cell signal, which we don't really have a good one there, they can't get on any social media through any of the school's technology. And actually, we don't do YouTube anymore because YouTube now requires each student to have their own login.
You're getting
But I'm
down to
saying,
the
so like,
detail.
what schools can actually, on their stuff, block it.
But not when the kid takes the Chromebook home at night.
Okay, but so back to number two. Asking, here's where I'm running into. So now are we saying that if
Wanna go.
the volleyball team has an Instagram page, students are not required, it is not like the coach says you have to be on Instagram, but if the students, as a way of promoting the team, take pictures and they have, you know, CVU volleyball or CVU RoboHawks and they make an Instagram. I guess asking and requiring, does that mean as long as it's just like sort of organically happening by students? Like students are going to have
Mhm.
online presence in clubs around sports, extracurriculars, school spot, like that, we're not dealing in that?
We're not dealing with that.
Check that out.
Okay,
This is what is being, when a school is requiring something of students.
well, it's just asking.
But wouldn't a code, wouldn't a team, a school team that creates a team page? So as long as, are we saying that as long as they don't require the students to be on that page, we're safe? There's, that's a
We're not-
safe
We're not
scenario.
saying anything that specific, but I think that's the
So I
implication.
wonder about the asking, though, like,
Yeah,
I mean,
so just take out asking.
I was
say
happy with
requiring
just
students to use-
requiring.
Yeah,
That would just
yeah, because like if you
requiring.
say, hey, while you're there, could you snap some pictures so we can put it on
Right.
the school's Instagram page? Sure. All right, we're gonna stop there. We've given you some, vague concept,
It wasn't,
that we won't necessarily ask you, but we will think about it, and then you may hear from one of us